All right. Why is it? I swear this thing always is weird now. It'll say you're live for however long before it starts doing the time code. Oh, anyways. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the 10K Rum Podcast. My name is Amos Joseph, joined by my co-host, Brook Potter, who's in the UK. How's it going, Brook?
It's going well, Amos. We are back to normal out here in Wales. I've actually been getting out to the gym quite recently. Had a good time with our friend Conk on Religion Zero on Sunday. Met a couple of interesting ladies. One of them happens to be Scottish. No funny business, at least not yet, because apparently they're happily married and we don't like to cross those lines, but very friendly people nonetheless. So life is getting back to normal. It's a lovely sunny day out here in Wales. In fact, I think it's going to be reaching some record temperatures this summer. So I'm looking forward to that. How are you doing out there in the land of 10,000 lakes?
Things are going well over here. We are so close to getting back to normal.
So close. What is the procedure out there in Minneapolis and Minnesota?
Well, I mean, it's really weird. Like, ever since the governor had signed in the new set of phases or orders going forward, most people have kind of just preemptively started moving towards going back to normal. Like, a lot of businesses that are outside of the Twin Cities area, so Minneapolis, St. Paul, a lot of areas are already moving towards allowing people to just not have to wear a mask.
Nice.
So there's, I would say, like, in terms of places that I don't need to wear a mask, has gone up by 50%.
Good.
However, when I'm anytime I'm going towards the city, if it's for work or stuff like that, still got to wear a mask. But even those places are starting to have procedures where it's like, privately they're allowing, like, if you have, I think it's, so where I work, it's 14 days after your second dose of the vaccine, you're allowed to not wear a mask for certain parts of your job.
Cool.
So there's that, and then of course businesses are having that, but most businesses, as far as I've heard, haven't checked any of that. Like where I work, they're checking that to give you special status once you're vaccinated, but where in public they have signs up that say that, but no one's checking that, so people are just pretty much back to normal.
It's pretty good.
The only people that are really wearing masks when you go to businesses and such is just the people that work there. Simply because either they haven't, they feel they want to, or they have been vaccinated or something. So
interesting. Well, that's good. It's good news that things are getting back to normal. Have you been out to the gym at all? What's going on with the gym, man?
Gonna have to start going back out there.
yeah, you should. Our good friend Robert Frank, who's been through quite an ordeal, our best wishes go out to him. He just got back to the gym for the first time since his ordeal,
and all his gains just came back in a day, huh?
Well, I know he'd wish that was the case. Obviously, that didn't happen. There's a fantastic video on his Instagram right now where he's back in the gym and he's doing chest. Chest Monday to Friday. He's doing about 30 pounds. And, Joey Bag of Donuts is there with him, kind of mocking him, doing the same 30 pounds, pushing with 2 fingers. So for him who hasn't been there, it's a lot. But yes, he's definitely got to get back into the
real quick before we get any further. For those of you joining us for the first time, do check out, of course, our Subscribe Star, as well as tacticalsoap.com, where you can wash your balls. Now, I wanted to kind of show people this really interesting thing, because this has been happening across the country. After people get vaccinated, they've been talking about certain anomalies that happen, and I just wanted to remind everyone that tactical soap sticks to your arm.
Brilliant.
Because It's like
Reasons.
obviously something is happening that the
Yes.
no, kidding. Tactical Soap, of course, check them out. Use the coupon code 10KRUM where you can get 10% off. Then that, of course, supports the show. But subscribestar.com/Shitler-Preachers is where you can pledge to support the show on a monthly basis for as little as $1 a month. So if you guys want to check those out, all the links are below. And, of course, on the little Chiron in the bottom. Yeah, so you saw me kind of make a little comment there. You've probably been hearing, exactly what I'm talking about.
I've seen videos of this thing.
Yeah, the anti-vax movement or sensation online has basically said like, oh look, magnets and stuff that are sticking to your arm because you get the vaccine. And I've tried watching through a few of these videos, and I'll look and go, oh, like anyone who knows anything, just basic common sense about like, if you're like, there's a layer of oil that's on your body, and magnets are very smooth, and your skin is not very, is just going to stick. I think someone said like, surface tension and stuff. And most of these videos just look like it's just slap a magnet on. Oh yeah, like I could just go get a fridge magnet, slap it on my arm, and it looks like I'm magnetic, but I'm not. Like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you've seen these, right?
Yeah, I've actually tested it out on 2 friends, and it actually stuck. Like we went on that spot, and the magnet stuck, and then I went right next to it, and it slid off. And then I put it on her chest, it slid off. I put it on her arm, it slid off. But yeah, twice I've actually seen it stay. I don't know what that is. I'm not making any kind of claim like, oh yeah, that's scientific or anything.
Yeah, because people are saying like, oh, now your body's magnetic, or talking about the microchip and all this stuff.
I don't know anything about that. It's weird. Yeah. Maybe there's a metallic something that's in what the vaccine they got. I don't know.
But anyone, if you understand how, not even just vaccines, just stuff that is injected into your body tends to go everywhere.
Well, it's not supposed to. This is actually what they've found out, is it's supposed to stay in the muscle tissue, but it doesn't, right? So the spike protein is actually, if it gets into the bloodstream, which is why we've seen so many, heart attacks and stuff like that in the young people, in the teenagers that are getting it. If it gets into the bloodstream, the spike protein unto itself is actually quite dangerous, and it accumulates in the ovaries, in the testicles, in the brain, in the lymph nodes, and in the heart.
Anywhere you're getting an injection, it's getting into the bloodstream.
No, if you get it, it's in muscle tissue. It's actually supposed to remain there, and your body will kind of develop the antibodies around it and push those into the bloodstream. But with this, because the spike protein in and of itself is basically what unlocks all of the cells, they find that when it does get into the bloodstream, that's when you get a lot of complications. So like you talked about, your mom has the polio vaccine spot on her arm, because that's where it stayed. That's where the body developed the immunity.
Well, I remember that vaccine, it's a different kind of injection compared to...
it's a whole different system and all of that. Yeah. But generally they put it into the muscle because that's the place where it's going to do the least damage, right? The virus, the decayed virus is not going to have access to the whole body and multiply and overwhelm the body.
Oh, I think I get what you're saying now.
That's why they put it in the muscles.
Yeah, because injections just in general usually are in muscular or even just high fat areas. Like, that's why sometimes you get a shot in your butt.
Yeah. I mean, they have intravenous stuff as well, like antibiotics. They'll put it in your bloodstream. Like they want that to go. But for a vaccine, they want to try and limit the area of exposure. Generally, like, that doesn't happen.
There was another thing that I saw was funny, and I forgot about, because they always, when they gave me during the trials, when they gave me the injections, they said, well, we're using safety needles, they called it. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then I looked it up, and then I started seeing videos of people like they would get the injection, and then it would just be a video footage someone at a drive-through or a pharmacy getting a shot, and then they would they'd inject, and they put in the plunger, and then they just pop it off. Like you
Yeah.
would see no needle, and people
Yeah.
were like, "Where did the needle go?" And then someone showed a video of like, no, these are safety needles. What happens is as soon as the plunger is fully in, the needle retracts.
Yes.
I didn't know that, but people were like, see, that's where the metal is. It's the whole needle is in your arm. I'm like, Jesus, like
No, and the problem is they also have trick syringes that they use in the movies and stuff like that do the same thing, and there really isn't any way to tell the difference. So there is the rumor going around that a lot of these celebrities and other people who are getting shots could be using trick needles. We don't actually know what they're doing. Yeah, I don't know. There's so much misinformation and noise around these whole things. Who knows what's really going on?
Yeah. Anyway, so real quick, I do want to apologize to everyone for last week. We didn't have the show. Just didn't even make an announcement. It just kind of happened. How would I explain? Basically, no, I had someone over for the weekend. And,
ooh, spicy.
I messaged Brooke and just said, I need to rest up a bit.
She wore you out, did she?
Hey,
Zane, good to have you with us, bro.
There's a lot of stuff with that, and I talked to you a little bit about it. So, but yeah,
that would be part of the Raw Take series if anybody wants to hear that story.
We really should get on that.
Yeah, we should.
So, another thing that really, I guess, not really got to me. Well, I should say got to me. John Cena.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone remembers him, he's got big through WWE wrestling, but then started getting into movies, and so he's this very popular sort of former. I think he was in the military. Yeah,
I think he was. Yeah,
big guy, and so everyone kind of knows John Cena and like the memes, the videos, the wrestling, and all this stuff. But I remember a while ago when I saw him started coming up because he wanted to bring WWE wrestling to China.
Yes. And he speaks Mandarin,
shitty Chinese.
Yeah, but he's been studying it for years, and quite rightly, it is shitty, but more than I could really speak. Bad. So I'm not gonna knock it too much.
Like, I talked to someone about it, and it was like, it'd be like if I was, hey, do you habla español?
Right, right.
Oh, I love to eat quesadillas, and it's just, what he's trying to say, and
right.
Understand the effort, but it's totally off base. So I listened to him, and I even struggle a bit to kind of have to slow down and listen to like his Chinese, but thought I was, hey, making an effort, and the Chinese people appreciated it and all that. But recently he had made a comment talking about Taiwan.
Yes.
And I guess something along the lines of saying Taiwan is a country. Not even like making some political statement or something, over the top, just the country of Taiwan, this and that. Yeah. Like if I was talking to you and said, the nation of Libya or Afghanistan or China or something, and then he said Taiwan, and the Chinese, who he's developed this whole relationship with corporately, did not like it.
No, they didn't.
To the point that I don't know if he was forced, but you might as well say he was.
It's probably in some fashion. So yes,
with some money waving in his face. He had to apologize, to say no. And his apology was, "I'm sorry that I said Taiwan as a country."
No, he didn't even say that.
He just said, I'm sorry to China.
Something offensive. Yeah.
Yeah. I respect China and their culture
and their people.
Yeah. It's like
he didn't actually retract anything. He just kind of, in fact, if you look at the Twitter feed based on his TikTok release, there is a lot of like, obviously, Chinese overlord propaganda persons saying you need to go to Taiwan and say that Taiwan is part of China in your shitty Chinese, right? But he didn't actually say that. Yeah. So this was part of the Fast and Furious 9 promotion with Vin Diesel and the rest of them and stuff like that. So he basically at the time, Taiwan was actually going to be the first place the movie was released. And his statement was basically, Taiwan is going to be the first country in Asia to have the movie. That was what he said. Right. And the fact that he acknowledged Taiwan as a country and not a territory is what got him in this shitstorm. And of course, Vin Diesel, who's also been pandering to the Chinese market, he's got even worse Chinese from what I understand, but he panders. And this is what you got to do. You got to pander in trying to make up for the clear fuck up of this incident. And in fear of the movie not getting into the Chinese market, the movie will now be premiering in mainland China before it premieres anywhere else. Never mind the fact that I believe theaters are closed in Taiwan because of a spike of COVID, so they actually couldn't do the premiere there first, but it's all spin for the CCP. They're going to work it as they do.
Yeah. So, yeah, John Cena, his whole catchphrase was, you can't see me. Well,
yeah,
we all saw you.
We can see you now. Exactly. I mean, to be fair, he's not the only celebrity that's had to kowtail to China, right? Didn't LeBron James get into some shit with this over Nike and
the entire NBA did?
The whole NBA. Mark Cuban got into hot water over some similar things, and he's like, we don't talk about those things because they all want the NBA in China. This is the big problem with pandering to the Chinese market, is at some point you're going to have to pander to the Chinese market, and it's going to require some bootlicking at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's not even just like recognition or anything of Taiwan and all that. It's like the pandering to China kind of, I'll just say, shits on Taiwan, really, because it's a real like existential problem for Taiwan. Like, China is not just like, hey, you're our country, and Taiwan's just no. Like, it's literally like, hey, you're our country. No. All right, we'll bomb you then. Still not going to say we're part of you. Like, it's just this back and forth. And while I do I like right now that sort of the world stage has taken notice of Taiwan and China. At the same time, like, I grew up knowing about this, so it was like, oh, took you guys long enough to
like, where the fuck have you been?
Yeah, like, just not even just Americans, the rest of the world in general. Like, where have you guys been? Like, you should have been on top of this. And when there's this sort of oddly dispassionate perspective of like, oh yeah, this whole thing, it's like, no, you don't know what it's like. It's very hard to argue around it, compared to, like, there's a stronger case, I think, for the US to not to like actively try to overthrow anything, but like there's a strong case for the US to step in between China and Taiwan than the US stepping into the Middle East in some cases, I would say.
Possibly. That might become an issue, especially geopolitics going forward. They're probably going to have to start treating China very much the way they treated Russia during the Cold War. And of course, there were CIA attempts to take out various, Russian assets and stuff like that. So I'm sure that's going on. The problem is there's no political will. China basically owns your Congress and your Senate, right? And your president, as Beijing Biden is well renowned. There's no political will because they can't see or hear because of all that Chinese money. So that's going to be
there would have to be some major resource or strategic importance to Taiwan to really make the US want to care. Because right now, the major push that you could really make a case for is Taiwan deserves to be recognized as independent, because like the history kind of speaks for it to say, hey, there was a civil war where there was a difference of opinion. The nationalists ran off to Taiwan and established their own government, and China hasn't given up since. Like, they haven't gotten over it since. It's the craziest ex-girlfriend in recent history. That's not even just saying, we're getting back together, but straight up saying, no. Like, look at this house. I got a whole room just for you. Like, you live here. Like, all right, you're looking kind of crazy over there.
And not only do you live here, I will go wherever you are, get you and bring you back here is kind of
yeah. If
thinking.
you don't, so scariest long distance relationship. So when all this stuff kind of happens and people kind of give into it, that money.
I mean, even NASA got into this heat.
Yep.
And I think we shared this story before where one of the Mars rovers landed and people were allowed to send a message to the rover and be like, messages from here, there. And there was a country list and Taiwan was in it. And of course, the CCP kicks up and, whatever. So instead of doing anything serious, they just basically changed it from country list to countries, provinces, and territories to kind of cover all aspects of it. So even in your scientific community, the CCP has got their hands into this stuff. So it's a real problem. I don't think there's any political will for anybody to fight this because, let's be honest, governments love power and communism, authoritarianism is more power. So in many ways, their goals are very much aligned. It's not just in the US, it's happening in the UK, it's happening in Europe, and don't even mention what the Belt and Road Initiative has done to Africa and Latin America, where they give these ridiculous loans secured by natural resources, ports and airports and other things. They can't pay back the money, and China basically takes control of major infrastructure on the default.
China is in all ways, except for blatantly doing it, is pretty much trying to colonize Africa.
It pretty much has. In many respects, it has.
Yeah.
And it's taken control of major assets and resources around the world. And the Americans, for the most part, and the Europeans even more so, don't seem to see what's going on and more so don't care.
It's interesting when I talk to people and I'll tell them, like, when you're looking at any sort of predictions or sort of analysis of the world, geopolitics, and you look at the possible flashpoints of a new world war, it pretty much gets down to, Russia, something with Russia and Ukraine or Georgia, one of those.
Yeah, probably be Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah, Russia. So like a Russia-Ukraine incident. Some will say maybe an India-Pakistan incident with Kashmir.
Very possible, yeah.
And then they'll say, and in Taiwan and China.
Yep.
And then there's the other one which is possible, which is Japan and North Korea.
I'm not as worried about that, but yes, I suppose that is a trigger. A trigger point.
And it's not necessarily like there would be a lot of casualties in those flashpoints, but those become the events that tip the scales to sort of trigger
people take sides and countries join in.
With all the taking sides, with all the conflict that could arise, for example, if China decided to invade Taiwan, okay, so that brings in Japan,
the US, Australia,
Japan. I don't know about the Philippines per se, but more
maybe
definitely like bases in those areas that are run by the US would be alerted.
Yeah.
But the question then becomes, and it's strictly because of the administration right now, is how involved would the US be? Because all those countries could just step in and that's all fine. Like Japan and all these countries could really put up a fight and try to defend Taiwan against China. But it's really the US that would tip that to really make a difference. But yeah, this is what would happen. And then of course, because the US and Japan are would get involved, then there's other countries that are tied to them, and then it's so on and so forth. And yay, World War III. So
quite possibly. And apparently, whoever the Ministry of Defense person for Beijing Biden, apparently China's not talking to him. Like, he's been trying to contact the generals to, coordinate certain things. They have flat out ignored him for like 3 attempts.
There's a video that I watched on the infographics channel on YouTube that addressed the sort of the logistics and the possibility of an invasion of Taiwan. And it's interesting. China is definitely a threat.
Yes.
But their military really sucks.
I wish I could say it's still like that, but in fact, they now have the biggest Navy fleet in the world. And they've been building that for like the last 3 years, like nonstop aircraft carriers.
So here's this is the caveat to that is they are superior in numbers.
Yes.
But they suck because that's not the only way. That's not the only advantage you can have. There's other, like, a lot of their problems is corruption in their in the hierarchy of their military. Anything from administrators to generals to admirals that are all very corrupt, undertrained.
Yeah, but if the size
there's all like the power plays that they're all trying to do with each other, trying to rise and fall through the Chinese government.
That wouldn't matter if there's an outside invasion. That would basically unify.
Oh, no, yeah. It's they're mainly talking like so in this video it addressed like a lot of those problems and how Taiwan could sort of essentially slow things down. By destabilizing that structure.
Right.
Whereas many other countries and militaries aren't really prone to that they don't have that weakness of being able to essentially demoralize an enemy before they even get to your shores.
While that's possible, unfortunately, the war games that the US has been running, in every scenario the US loses. So that's actually a report that came out like at the end of last year from the Pentagon, basically saying they really just don't have the equipment and the numbers and the locations to really contain like a full-out war with China. So yeah, you're right. It's going to come down to strategic use of resources and other things. Let's hope it doesn't happen. We know this is a hot time because nobody's at the wheel in the US, right? Beijing Biden is asleep at the wheel. In fact, I'll touch on a story about that in a minute. But on the subject of China, Trump was right about the source of the coronavirus coming from a lab in Wuhan. Did you hear this? That all of the mainstream media is doing backflips?
Yeah, the lab leak hypothesis that started pretty early on.
April of last year.
And a lot of the media was kind of just shoving it under, just sweeping it under a rug and not really talking about it. But then now, like even late last year, I remember the media wasn't running with it yet. Yeah. But a lot of people were hearing about it and then hearing some like, scientists and experts that were like, it looks like it. Yeah. But the media still wouldn't run with it. And now, after, saying it's all fake news, it's all conspiracy theory, now the media is
Trump's
like
delusion.
Yeah. Now the media is just, it's possible. Maybe you're
so they've been wrong for a year. Who would have thought? It's so
there's got to be something with someone's interest changed, and they realize like, well, this is not going to look good for anyone else.
It's Trump is out of office. Even CNN, the capital of fake news, admitted.
And we're
in a live interview.
Yeah. And we're also way past any real, like if we had like addressed this earlier on, there would have been a lot more public opinion to develop to like move towards, okay, what are we going to do with China about this? Well, now things are sort of, if you want to, just for lack of a better term, like things are going back to normal. Like the public opinion is more focused on going back to normal than let's, keep accountable the culprits of this pandemic.
Yes.
Everyone's just like, I don't care anymore. I just want to go back to normal. Like I don't like I just want to do this.
This was the point that I was making. Even CNN, which is like the bastion of fake news, has lost over 90% of its audience since Trump has left office, admitted that the reason they did not pick up on this story and the reason that they did not do any investigation and any kind of actual journalism was because Trump said it. That's it. Orange Man Bad is the reason you're not getting reliable news, which is a terrifying precedent. You can just look at it and be like, all of these news outlets have been lying to the American public based off a narrative, Orange Man Bad. They've done zero research, done zero fact checking. They did everything they could to try and deny it. And now they've got egg on their face. Yeah. And there was an interview and they literally said that the reason they dropped the ball was because Trump said it. So that says a hell of a lot about the integrity of the mainstream media.
Yeah. So now that they're looking into it, it's kind of because the news isn't really, but people aren't really drawn to that article. They're not really drawn to that news of, oh, maybe China did. I mean, there are people that are feeling vindicated now. Yes. Hey, we've been talking about this whole time, but public opinion isn't really going to do much with it. They're just going to, because everyone's like, oh, I'm getting my second shot and then I'm done. I'm just back to normal. Like businesses that are opening, we don't have to wear masks anymore. Like people are just focused on that. Rightly so. They should be like trying to get back to normal. We've been waiting over a year for this, but it is like there is a tactic being played here with how messaging and sort of how our society is like, what is important to us now? Like this should be important. China, fucked up.
Yeah. And it seems that Dr. Fauci was involved.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah. Apparently there's funding from the NIH that has gone to this lab in Wuhan. Yeah. And, this has all come out now in public record. And they were basically doing like experimentations on coronaviruses and manipulating them deliberately in a hopes to evolve them so that they can kind of get ahead on the vaccines. And that is the premise that this research was taking place. It's outlawed in the US, but he was funding the lab in
so there was funding, but
gain of function. Thank you, Brian. That's it.
But we're still looking at like we're still calling it the lab leak. We're not whether like the intention behind it.
No. He said it's Fauci said it is very unlikely that this occurred naturally. He's actually directly implying that this is a virus.
No. I get that, but I'm right. But I'm saying what I'm getting at is the release of it, whether it was an accident.
Oh, right. We don't know if it's intentional or not. Yeah. No, we're not saying that.
Yeah, because it's a lab leak. It's not necessarily like a lab release hypothesis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all the evidence suggested was a mistake. The early reporting that came out of China and the whistleblowers that came out, there's the story about the bat. They put it into a bat. The guy got peed on. He isolated for 14 days, but that was kind of the release. That's how it supposedly got out. All of it. Yeah. So he obviously went in to feed them or whatever. Right. I don't know how you keep bats in a lab. I don't know. But yeah, that was the original story. And of course, our Chinese overlords wiped all of the university data. All the people who said something, you can't find their information anymore. But information did get out, and it seems to have been vindicated by the recent releases from the NIH. So fascinating stuff, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we spent 30 minutes shitting on China. That's been, I feel like an enema, we've been purged. What's going on with Memorial Day? Like when you first raised the Memorial Day thing, I thought, something happened. Something fucked up.
No. So for of course the American audiences primarily, happy Memorial Day. It is Memorial Day today. Memorial Day is a day of sort of just remembering those who had basically died in service of their country. Now, the take that I've started to have now with it is, definitely remember those and honor those who have served. But look forward to, I think, a brighter future where having to die for country, like serving your country is great, but I think having to die for your country, there were times I could like there are wars and such I can see like, yeah, you need to like, fight a threat. But nowadays the way wars are, it's all about securing interests and just helping big corporations, have their assets protected instead of actually really having some major existential threat. Yeah, it's like, thank you for your service, but really would have been better if you didn't have to die for some, some big oil company. So it's like a two side. There's two sides to this. It's like I definitely like honor and honor those people that have served, but people nowadays still honor them, but fuck the people who sent them there. Like,
no, I agree. And the politicians have been the worst supporters of the military, especially the veterans.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm on board with that. At the same time, not all threats are going to be existential. You might have a civil war, and your military is going to have to fight either for the freedom or not.
I saw something that said, like, our country, like, well, we're having a lot of civil unrest and there's all these problems, that I mean, you and I are obviously different, but the majority of sort of millennials, Gen Z, even some Gen X who are young enough, the majority of that group of people just don't have it in them to start anything.
Yes.
Major. And follow through. So any sort of major revolution or shift or war within our borders doesn't seem likely. Not entirely impossible, but doesn't seem as likely as, let's say, something that maybe happened 50, 60 years ago when that generation was a little bit more gung-ho about, organizing.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. I mean, if you look at the history of revolutions, you don't need the majority of the country, right? You just need a certain amount of instability. So revolutions so Lenin took advantage of the unrest in Moscow. Hitler, for the most part, none of these like revolutionists were elected, right? They basically took power.
They were taking advantage of usually like a post-war or a post sort of crisis sort of country, right?
Correct.
After getting absolutely fucked, they were like, oh, let's just slip in here and take over.
Yeah. So a collapse of government, basically, where people have lost enough trust in government. These individuals step in, and it doesn't have to, as I said, it doesn't have to be the majority of the country. You just need your own semi-army, and you can do a lot of damage. So yeah, who knows what's going to happen? And I agree with you. Most Americans, I mean, the adage, fat, lazy Americans with their guns, they're just going to shoot people from the couch, while sipping sweet
the majority
tea.
of those Americans with guns aren't in the city, so they're in the countryside.
They're in the countryside, yeah.
No one's going to go bother them. So whereas when you go into the city, you get there's people that own guns, but sort of that gun-toting sort of
revolutionary,
the more willing to act person is not as common. They're there.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because even with the civil unrest that's happened over the last year and a couple months, because of the pandemic, because of just everything that's happened, we still haven't hit that yet. Like, it's gotten bad, but it hasn't become like, that snowball.
Well, not yet. And you're right. For the most part, there's a very big push, but that's why the establishment, the media and tech are working as diligently as they are to try and kind of crush those ideas. A good example of that is what's going on in Arizona right now with the audit of the votes. Have you seen any coverage of this vote audit that's been taking place in Arizona for the last month and a half?
No, I haven't. But yeah, so because of that, any sort of rise up or any sort of
So this
instigation of violence is not as likely to happen because of the lack of coverage.
That's it. But they realize that is the problem. If they allow the truth to get out, that can be the catalyst that would push this over the edge.
Has there anything that's been revealed about that audit so far?
No, they've just crossed a million hand checks. The area I think is about 2 million and maybe a little bit more. So they got about another month again. But no, they're not saying anything until the final report comes out. But in response to that, you get every Democrat, including the I think the governor, screaming, shouting, shrieking, trying to discredit, this is anti-American, this is treasonous. Every word in the book, every racist, Islamophobe, everything has been thrown at this. Every lawsuit has been thrown at this. Commissions to the Department of Justice at the federal level have been requested to stop this audit. And the question we must all ask, while Rachel Maddow and these journalists that are really activists pretending to be in the news lose their shit over this audit, you got to ask yourself why. If it's all about the most secure election in the history of the United States, what's the worst that could happen? One, you reaffirm the result that's already come in. Two, maybe you find some discrepancies, but it wouldn't have changed the outcome. Or three, you find massive fraud and you realize what's broken in the system.
Well, I would say there's maybe a 4 in there, which is you find out there's substantial fraud that requires revamping like these systems.
That would be the outcome of 3.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I told you at one point. Was I wasn't entirely convinced of a massive amount of fraud, but I was hoping that there would be investigations later on that could lead to sort of tightening up loose ends for the next election.
Correct.
And now that that's happening, and it's no one is even suggesting this will overturn anything. Just
it can't.
Let's just double check it, make sure we dot our I's, cross our T's, and everyone's freaking out about it. And it's like,
you must ask the question, why? Why would they freak out about a forensic audit that they say is the most secure in the history of the US? In fact, it was so intense, they even begged. Like the whatever the Maricopa County in Arizona, their local jurisdiction wrote a letter basically saying, please, for the love of the country, do not do this audit. The guy who heads up the audit, he said Maricopa County offered him $10 million not to do the audit. So you got to ask yourself, why? Why? Why is Rachel Maddow losing her shit and already discrediting any findings and criticizing, the cyber ninjas that happens to be the company doing the audit? Why are they going to such length to suppress this kind of information?
Yeah.
And it's to the point that you're making. If people realize that their vote has been stolen, democracy isn't real, like your vote really doesn't matter, and they're hacking the system to put their people in place, that is the kind of thing that could seriously damage the country.
Right.
It's crazy. Keep your eyes out. End of June, guys. Arizona audit. I think it's azaudit.org. You can see it live on camera.
So, I don't think I haven't actually announced this just yet, so a couple weeks ago, I had announced that I was running for the Libertarian Party of Minnesota at-large position. So it's like a voting member in the executive committee. And I'd went to the convention. Went up and gave a little talk. Like it's like a minute, introduced myself, why people should vote for me. And the election went on as planned. They voted and everything. And out of 10 people to fill 8 spots, I came in 9th place. Therefore,
loser.
Exactly. So,
yes.
And this is all recorded, so this is all very public, so I can talk about it now. I mean, other people have talked about it too, but people have been very vague on the exact details. So, some things I was kind of thinking it over, and basically the day after, I think the day the day after, like 2 days after, I should say, I put in an official challenge to the results with the judicial committee of the party, and they said, okay, we'll look into it and we'll get back to you. And they said, so my claim was, I challenged the results on the basis of eligibility. Well, the Minnesota Libertarian Party has an eligibility part where if you want to be part of the executive committee, you have to have been a sort of good standing member for a consecutive 45 consecutive days prior to the convention.
Right.
And if you have that, you can vote, you can run, and all this stuff. Well, on the floor, so anyone who knows anything about like parliamentary procedure, like someone made a motion to, well, let's waive that rule. Well, we found out you can't do that.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
You cannot waive the rule at all.
A constitution, like a charter rule then.
So there's two different types of rules. There's bylaws,
right,
which are unchanging unless only the executive committee can vote on changing those things.
Right.
Versus what are called convention rules, which dictate how you do things during a convention, which is what we're doing. And you can waive convention rules however you want, as long as the motion passes. Well, there was a mistake somewhere along the line where someone made that 45-day rule a bylaw instead of a convention rule. Because most conventions, most parties separate the two. So you have convention rules that are very flexible depending upon the need versus bylaws, which are very strict, cannot just be changed on the fly.
Right.
So even if the entire convention said, we want to waive all these things, you can't.
Right.
Then anyone could then step in and challenge and say, oh, actually, what is called Robert's Rules of Order, which governs parliamentary procedure, would step in and say, hey, we can't actually do this. Oh, crap. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to undo all this. So there were two races that were, I should say, that looked suspicious. One was the race for the chair of the party, chair of the executive committee, where they did waive the rule. So the motion to waive the rule passed, even though it wasn't supposed to be allowed to happen. It passed, but and then the at-large, the motion failed. But there were people that were in both races that were trying to get that rule. That the only person that would really be of consequence for that to be ruled out, so to be waived. So if it passed for one and it failed for another, let's just say that was the case, you could actually do that.
Right.
Then that person could not run in that race where it wasn't waived.
Yes.
And so I challenged on that, and then that's where they found out, oh, wait, we can't waive it to begin with. So as a result,
the judicial committee got away from their hookers and blow long enough to dust off their legal understanding of the bylaws, probably covered in crud for 30 years, and actually did some work, actually did some judicial work.
So this is the thing. This is the thing is the judicial committee of this party. I think they do meet at some point just as a way of hey, we exist.
Yeah. It's the quorum. Yeah, close enough. A meeting adjourned.
But they've never, I shouldn't say never. It's probably been so long that it seems like they've never had to.
Right.
But they said they've never had to meet.
I love this story.
They never had to meet for a ruling and here I am 2 days after a convention challenging. They're like, oh shit, we got to do something. now, nothing, I'm not talking shit about them. It's just, it's interesting to see oh, they have to do so. So they met up. They had to make a determination. They did a lot of work within a 2-week period to be on the up and up because they have 30 days to respond to the challenge. So they were taking care of it right away. And then they called me up and said, hey, can we have you come in? We have a Zoom meeting. We want to talk this over, get your point of view. So I gave them my take, and I said, here's all this stuff. Here's what I know. This is why I'm challenging this. And not only did they eventually they showed me, so they had me on for 15 minutes. Then I left, and then finished their meeting in another half an hour. I got to see the video play back. So the video, they recorded the meeting.
Oh, they're recording the meeting. Okay.
Yeah. So I got
I thought you had a sex tape or something.
No. So I got to watch the rest of it. Because they've already made the ruling, the recommendations, and all that. So I watched it over, and I was like, oh, okay. So they eventually ruled unanimously, yes, 2 people that were quote unquote elected were ineligible. Therefore, they don't count. Well, now, so here's what's going on with that specifically. There are no longer 8 at-large members. There are only 6. And there's 2 vacancies because the bylaws demand you need to have 8 members.
Right.
So instead of filling the vacancies by default, they're calling a special meeting for the executive committee with the 6 members of the at-large, and there's of course chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary. They all meet up, and then they all basically say, well, I move to fill the vacancies with Amos and the other guy that lost.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right. And then towards the end of the month, we'll have the first official meeting of the new executive committee.
Fantastic.
So barring some crazy, event where they say, no, we're not going to fill it with the guys who were already running. I will essentially be an at-large member. But this hasn't happened before in the party.
Good. Good. I love this story.
So yeah, they found out a bunch of stuff. They need to scrutinize membership more. They need to separate the voting body and the non-voting body, because what had happened with our convention was, so we all get name tags when we went into the convention, and anyone who was a member had a little gold sticker by their name.
Right.
Well, that was just membership. That wasn't 45-day member.
Right.
So someone thought oh, that's 45-day member, so all these people can vote.
Right.
So we're not going to go back and scrutinize every last vote from there, but we're at least saying hey, moving forward, don't just there should be different stickers. There should be a 45-day sticker. There should be a member sticker. There should be, candidate or whatever. There's.
Hey, it's Vincent in the chat, man. That's cool.
Is he?
Man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Good to have you, bro.
Yeah, the gold star for Brian, it indicates membership in the party, because you can attend a convention without being a member. You just can't really vote on. You can't vote. Period on certain things. So there's all these rules. So they're, because of my
hypothetically speaking, right? And I don't like doing hypotheticals because it can get really complicated. Can the executive committee basically throw you all out and say, let's do a whole new election?
Well, so that would have been, so when the challenge was brought up, it had to go to the judicial committee, because it would be a conflict of interest for the executive committee to rule in their own election.
Right. That's a good point.
So it would have been, it would have to have been recommended by the judicial committee to do a brand new election.
That. Okay.
But it's just, I think it was just easier, basically. Sure. Okay, let's make these recommendations of how we can make it better in the future, make it less confusing. But we're still going to rule that these 2 people are ineligible, and the executive committee would then move forward with however they want to do it. Because the bylaws actually say, if there are vacancies, you must fill them.
Right. Right.
So all the judicial committee did was remove, and now the executive committee has to then fill those back in, instead of a clause that says, oh, you just automatically fill in the vacancies.
So if you get in, or when you get in, because it's pretty much looking like a done deal. And so congratulations, you know, all this winning, you know.
Yes.
You wouldn't have actually, technically, you wouldn't actually have been voted in. Would that be accurate?
I would have, the way I'm essentially getting in at this point is by filling a vacancy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, technically.
Oh man, it's not your first voted in office, you know. You'll have to wait for another one.
But yeah, this became a whole thing, and this actually had been happening across the country.
Yes.
A lot of what are called like state affiliates or state parties had been experiencing an influx of membership, but they all had what is called like a seasoning rule, is what it's called. Like you need to be a member for so many days before we allow you to run, let alone vote in these internal elections. And bylaws, by the way, are readily available on all state websites, so people can check in how they do this. But there was a lot of members across the country that were kind of felt left out because they didn't get to run. Well, it makes sense, like why a state should say, hey, like we love the membership, you know, you come on board, but we need to know you a little bit.
Yes. Before you can vote.
Yeah, we don't want it to just, you know,
you don't want a whole bunch of communists coming in and being like, you know, we're voting communist, authoritarian, you know, just taking over the area.
It's funny because the move of a lot of these members was in the name of staving off, quote unquote, staving off a communist takeover of the party.
Right. So
we're going to keep the communists out
side to the other.
Yeah, we're gonna keep the communists out by doing what they do.
Interesting.
we're gonna you know pack these elections and voting.
Sounds very much like U.S. politics as normal. It sounds like a microcosm of what's been going on. The only difference with that and the presidential election, there are some people who still think Trump you know, if the results show out, constitutionally it's not possible. There's no way to remove a sitting president apart from impeachment. So even if the results turn out to be complete fraud,
and even if you just kept removing, you know, if you somehow managed to remove Biden, then Pelosi, well, then you would go to just the Speaker of the House.
Then it goes to Pelosi.
Oh, then to Pelosi. Sorry. But then, I mean,
the lines of secession are in place, so there's no way that Trump could get in, save some absolute miracle. That even if the election turns out to be a complete scam,
some entirely unconstitutional,
it would have some unconstitutional measure, some
something the Constitution
from the 1800s. For. some constitutional crisis. That's the only way it's going to happen. But no, that's not what we're saying. But in your case, I'm glad that the law is on your side. I'm glad that you are. I get what is the term, like elect? Amos elect?
No, there's no elect. There's no swearing in either. It's just, so I'm basically the Libertarian Party of Minnesota Executive Committee at large.
Right. Do you get that after as you say, there's no swearing in. So when do you get that title?
I mean, it would basically be next week.
Okay. So what do you have before that? To be like at large to be?
I'm just a member. I'm just a member.
Okay, fair enough.
It's nothing super special. It's just you take part in the voting body that determines what happens in the party.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, getting into all that, it's, you know, what'll happen going forward is we start to form committees, we start to plan for things. You know, we get to look into like, where's the money going? How are we getting ideas for raising money, spending money, new ways of operating the party? Yeah, it's the executive committee. We form all the other committees. Like there's going to be, so we're going to form like a convention committee for next year. There's going to be a ballot access committee in preparation for 2022 and 2024.
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I love it. I can't wait for you to get onto the position. It's going to be a great experience. Lay off the hookers and blow, at least, until you know what you're doing.
It's funny because that was actually the case. So this is very
really there was a case of hookers and blow.
So in the Libertarian Party of Nevada, a former chair like years ago had been caught like embezzling party funds for hookers and blow. Yeah. And there were some people in their executive committee that were complacent to that and didn't like address it until it was like blown open.
Literally.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's funny. Yeah. The most libertarian thing that happened at a party
is the guy to embezzle it and blow it on hookers and blow in Nevada, probably at Las Vegas at the MGM Grand.
Something like that. So yeah,
well, congratulations, also, Amos. Yeah, that's real. Yeah, good for you.
I couldn't help but think, unlike Donald Trump, I was managed to judicially overturn an election.
Well, he was denied, to be honest. But yes, you do have one up on him in that respect.
If you know, like Vermin Supreme on Twitter, he created this whole meme where anytime someone had like backed out of a race or unfortunately passed away, like politicians, he would just tweet out, "I beat so and so." Like when he was still running for nomination of the Libertarian Party, there were other like Democrats and Republicans that were dropping out of their races. So he would say, "I beat Tulsi Gabbard," or "I beat, this person, I beat that person." And it got to the point where he said like, I beat Ruth Bader Ginsburg after she died.
Shit.
It got really edgy and stuff.
Whoa.
So
There's no chill on that guy.
Someone told me, you should have tweeted, "I beat Donald Trump." Like, but,
technically, Donald Trump hasn't quit the race, so you can't really quite say that yet. He lost, but he hasn't. He never gave into it. That's an interesting take.
The campaign isn't really going.
Oh no, there's nothing. Well, he is starting up his rallies again, apparently. So he's going to do some Trump rallies. I don't know what he's going to do. That's going to be pretty interesting. But on the flip side, Biden got 7,000 viewers of his memorial speech as the most voted for president in the United States history. Isn't that exciting? 70. I have some videos with more views than that.
Yeah, that's interesting how that the whole idea of most popular president ever. I'm like,
it's a stretch.
Yeah,
it's a stretch. But yeah. So his Memorial Day speech, well, it's probably more now, but at the time, 7,300 people watched it, and you're telling me 81 million people voted for this guy. Yeah, sure. But in other news, did you hear about what's going on at Amazon? This is fantastic. Did you hear about what they're doing in the warehouses at Amazon with their Amazon box?
What? Amazon box?
An Amazon box. So this is like a real thing.
Cultural appropriation.
This is a real thing, and I think they took it down the minute they put it up. People have said that working at Amazon is not exactly the easiest job in the world. It's kind of very taxing. There's stories of people having to like piss in bags and wear diapers to do deliveries, and you work these ridiculous shifts, and they're always shifting things around and stuff. So apparently, and to solve this warehouse problem, they created the Amazon booth, like Zen as in Buddhist Zen,
meditation,
namaste sort of thing. Yes, it is a soundproof box that basically allows you to go in. It's probably got a little fountain, a couple of rocks, and there's like a screen there, and you can select some calming music to you basically relax and quote unquote recharge your inner batteries. Don't know when you're allowed to do this, probably on your already short lunch break, as the case might be. But this is what they did. instead of actually doing something to improve the work standards and, like actually give some workers rights and proper coffee breaks or whatever, they do Amazon boxes. Did you hear about this?
No.
As you can imagine, they're being trolled real fucking hard, right? They've basically been called, I go in here to cry boxes, right? Like, I regret my life choices boxes. It's a real thing. They tweeted it out, and of course, well, anything you post on the internet is forever. And they got roasted, absolutely gutted for whoever thought this was a good idea. You didn't hear about that? Man, that's so funny. I wonder if they'll deliver one to my house, like Prime. If I could get Prime delivery of an
Amazon booth.
An Amazon booth. They're probably going to sell them off because the idea fucking sucks. So you can probably get it in the discount section.
Yeah. Oh, man.
You didn't hear about that, no?
No.
Oh, dude, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, we missed. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we missed the anniversary of George Floyd's murder, of his death. And did you celebrate, the death of George Floyd?
I know plenty of Democrats are celebrating it.
Yeah. I know a couple of embassies. Did you know that Joe Biden basically put out a decree, the State Department, saying that embassies around the world can fly the BLM flag at their consulates?
Why?
Well, because George Floyd is a saint. He saved the black people.
Like, this is the problem is you can talk about the conversation about police brutality and such. We could talk about that.
Yeah.
But what is the term? Is it benediction, canonization, making someone a saint?
Sainthood. Yes.
Granting sainthood to victims is just inaccurate because it's about the conversation. It's not necessarily about it's about the people, but it's the brutalization of the people. So because people start talking about the drugs and in Floyd's system and all this stuff, and that's all valid stuff to talk about, but you're missing it. You're completely going past where you're supposed to reside your criticisms. We're supposed to talk about the police and how they brutalize people. We're not sitting here trying to we don't go so far. We're virtue signaling and just completely pandering to say, oh, everyone that is brutalized by police are saints.
Exactly.
It's no. Cops shouldn't be brutalizing people because people's lives are affected. Full stop. That's it. We're not going to push it to, we got a saint. People are saints and cops saints. Are evil. And
George Floyd is a saint.
Yeah, all victims are saints, and all
I guess the saints of fentanyl? Are evil. Yeah.
Oh God. God.
I mean, it's so bad, Amos. It's so bad. Even out here in the UK, and we have nothing to do with American politics.
Yeah.
The city of Liverpool lit up basically their kind of mayoral office building in purple lights and whatever in commemoration of the death of George Floyd.
There was a picture I saw where they did a drawing of George Floyd's face, and they put his face in a sunflower.
Right. I saw one where he literally had the halo, saint iconography.
Regardless of religious belief, you and I with our past of being Christian ministers and stuff, would you just a quick little religious moment in the conversation? Do you think Floyd went to heaven?
Yes.
Yeah. But do we sit here, but we understand there's a clear messaging sort of problem with oh, he's a saint, he's perfectly perfect. Nothing went wrong. He was,
he did absolutely nothing.
He was straight
wrong,
up, he was virtuous, straight up he was MLK Jr. of Minneapolis.
Immaculately conceived.
Yeah.
It's that's when you're kind of missing the, what's it, beyond the pale is the expression I was like. You're a few fries short of a Happy Meal.
You just, it's, yeah.
And I mean, look, what happened was tragic. Nobody should lose their life in any kind of police confrontation. We've had the discussion. Personally, I didn't see the evidence to really convict Chauvin over the whole thing, but what it's become, the whole incident, and now the embassies are flying Black Lives Matter flags with basically the communist fist, right? Or the Roman salute. I mean, this is beyond propaganda. This is beyond people even living in the real world. Yeah. And that's what's really concerning for me.
Yeah, it's because the big thing is there's a divide between the movement and the conversation.
Correct.
So like, and it's similar, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar to other groups who may have had good intentions in their movement, but had bad actors ruin the entire idea. That's just true for a lot of different ideas.
Look at the French Revolution.
French Revolution. I could even talk about just certain words and stuff. So, so you remember, like, at one point, Donald Trump used the word nationalism. He said, I consider myself like an American nationalist.
Yes.
And CNN, Don Lemon, all these guys just freaking, their heads nearly exploded because they heard the word nationalism. And that has kind of driven the narrative of how nationalism has become sort of like a universally bad word. Like, it's it's no different than saying white supremacist or Nazi.
Correct.
And we had on the guy from Trinidad, Kirk.
Yes, Megu.
Kirk Megu.
Yes.
Kirk Megu came on, and we talked about the different brands of nationalism. Like, there's Trinidad nationalism, which I didn't see him doing any Roman salutes or saying, some power or whatever over other races. Like, none of that.
Correct.
And then I told him a little bit about, like, on that show. So anyone who wants to check that out, that's we had it way back with Kirk.
That was what Shitlord Preaches. That was Shitlord Preaches. So
we had this whole conversation where I talked about, like, I mentioned Taiwan nationalism. Well, what is Taiwan nationalism? Recognizing Taiwan as an independent nation. It's pretty much the core of it.
Even though it's racially equivalent to the Chinese, they are national. So it's not a racial.
There's a racial motivation behind it.
That was the point I was making. You're nationalist.
Yeah. I am, by believing that Taiwan should be recognized as an independent nation, I am in line with a Taiwan nationalist sort of narrative.
Correct.
But then I've talked to people about this, and I'll say, the Chinese Civil War, and they'll say, who fought in that? Well, it was the communists and the nationalists. The communists and the Nazis. No.
You don't understand. Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, like, it's completely different. Because when it's just side explain. No.
The Nazis were National Socialist. And it was nationalism just means your country first. Like, you are a patriot. You are putting the interests of your country first. Doesn't mean that you don't care about the other people. Doesn't mean, you think you're superior or anything like that. Because if as a Trinidadian national, we ain't superior to nobody, right? But it just means, it's another word for patriot. It's somebody who loves their country and, seeks the interests of their country.
Right. But it just so again, the word for nationalism gets bastardized by the media, by just the language to equate it to other things, rather than just understanding it as, like, well, different countries have different interests that they put forward as, securing the interests of their country. Taiwan's main interest, being recognized by the world as independent.
Yes, and free of China intervention.
Yeah. What are some American nationalist ideals? Well, American nationalism could be just a more intense
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well, yeah, but it's a little more like there could be like a more intense version of that, like because patriotism and nationalism, I think, are different. Like loving your country versus really loving your country are kind of there's degrees of it, I would say.
I don't think there's a difference.
Because there's a guy that's just like, I'm an American, I should own a gun, versus the guy who's like, decorating his entire house with flags and shooting guns every day.
Right? They could both be nationalists. They could both be patriots. I don't really. I think it's pretty synonymous. If you're a nationalist, you're a patriot. I'll have to double check that, but that's basically my understanding of what it is.
I think I've always kind of understood nationalism as sort of like a more committed form of patriotism.
Okay, it's still patriotism. Because somebody could be very patriotic.
Well, because patriotism could just sort of be for the ideals, whereas nationalism is like you're for the country's. You're in line with the government in some ways.
No, I don't necessarily agree with that, because there are a lot of nationalists who are definitely not aligned with your government right now.
Right.
But no, I think it's synonymous. I think it's patriotism is basically nationalism, and that you put your country first in, making your decisions and your politics and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, bastardizing ideas, where movements are fine, but then, some bad actors. So like there's, patriots are nationalists. Not all nationalists are patriots. That's interesting.
I'm not sure how that would work. I'm not sure how a nationalist could not be a patriot. I'm not.
So anyone who's wondering, actually, so Brook has the way his setup is, it looks brighter there. It's daytime here.
I've got help. I don't know if they can see.
Yeah, you've got, Oh, I didn't know you got that.
Well, it is daytime. I mean, you can see out the window. Look, the sun is out. I'm in the UK, guys, so I'm on a different time zone. I think Amos has to open his window now.
It's the blinds. And see, now my face is like...
You're wider than me.
No, I've got blinds right here, and it's just the way the sunlight comes in. Like there's this weird glare, but I mean, this will work.
Yeah, we got about 15 minutes. We'll be all right.
Yeah. Oh, geez, now we're both.
So, but I love what you were saying about the bastardization of language, and this has been a tactic of the left for years, right? And this simplified Chinese and the use of the communists, destroying language. All of that is we're seeing
started.
Yeah, we're seeing that today, right? Of course, this was the premise of Orwell's 1984, where literally they, you had the Ministry of Truth, and they kept simplifying the language, removing words of dissent and other things like that. And was it? I can't remember the phrasing of what was on the Ministry of Truth, but we have that today. So nationalism is one. Racism is another. They've completely redefined racism. The left has. Oppression is another one. And then they create words which don't actually. Yeah, exactly, Brian. It's called newspeak. But the ministry had like truth is love and war is peace, or I can't remember what the phrasing was. But this is what they do. This is what communists do: is they destroy and they go after language, and that's what we're having now. When we deal with very far leftists and you say things like nationalism, we're speaking two different languages at the end of the day, which is why in a lot of ways it's not reconcilable, right? You can say woman and we can't even agree on what that is, right? So it's getting to the point now where there is you can't bridge these gaps, right? It's not like in the past, 20, 30 years ago, you had a left, person on the left and the right, but they could agree on loving the country and this, that, and the other. Now the language is so conflated. You don't have to call somebody a he, a her, a zer, a tree, a helicopter. We can't even communicate And when we do communicate, there's no guarantee they're hearing what you're saying or understand what you mean.
Yeah, I've noticed that definitely with cultural differences. So we're not even talking within our country, like the changing of American English, but also even just cultural differences between American English and, let's say, British English, Australian English, Trinidad English.
Yeah, well, we barely speak English in Trinidad.
I remember, learning different words from you, like. Do
you remember any?
We Lyman, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the classic one. If we go on to Lime, yes. For those who don't know, liming is to hang out. Like how you guys say, let's go and hang out. Trinidadians would say, let's go to Lime. The Bajans say it as well. So
there was another one you told me. I'm trying to remember. It has something to do with, like, it's a very common conversational thing.
Common conversational thing.
Like you and I are no. What are some common ones? I'll rattle off some.
Papa Yo, Lime,
right.
Mama Guy,
No.
Abzoki.
Nope.
Dotish.
No.
I mean, let's not spend the rest of the show going through Trinidad colloquial languages, but we'll get back to
was cataplow? No.
Cataplow was one it was understood. It just meant like wow. Well, it had many meanings depending on how you use it. But yes, cataplow.
Like Spanish has a weird one. Orale.
Okay, I don't know what that is. What is that?
A lot of things. I remember when I learned about it, like someone explained it to me, like, it could be like a greeting, it could be like a let's go, it could be like a like exhortation. It's just weird.
Right. There are a couple of words like that. Yeah, I get that. But I mean, this is what's being destroyed.
Yeah.
Right. Even the American language with your wrong spelling is being destroyed. That y'all are using words and you're talking right past each other, and that is the playbook out of the communists. That is the communist playbook.
That's why nowadays when I talk to people, I'm even like, I'll hear something and I'm like, hold on, okay, what do you think this means?
Yes, yeah, that's usually where I start with most conversations.
And then they go, oh, so see, I always learned this and you always learn that, and then. Most cases, I mean, typically because of people I interact with, we would like find a bridge there. Oh yeah, we just think of these things differently instead. But then the way it is kind of with a lot of interactions in the media or in social media, it's like, you don't even get that. It's just straight up like, it's like, hey, what do you think that means? Oh, are you trying to use some like outdated, archaic view of this and that and the other? And it's like, no. I'm just,
they make assumptions and
it matters.
They try to put you in a box. Yeah. I completely agree. And that's what's so troubling, especially out here in the UK with the hate speech laws. Mm-hmm. We have hate speech laws in the UK, and we have things that are completely contradictory in terms of our rights. Like you have the right to express yourself. At the same time, you have the right not to be offended. Two things that are like mutually exclusive are actually in the law.
The right not to be offended is a cultural thing, which is weird.
Yeah, they've made it a legal thing, which is impossible.
Oh, for you guys, yeah.
For us in the UK.
I was gonna say we just, like I said, it's a cultural thing for us because there's no legal way of suing someone for being offended.
Correct, as it should be. As it should be, and don't adopt. Yeah, you got to be vigilant because this stuff crept in on us, and it's crept into Europe. And if you read the European Convention on Human Rights, there's always a great right at the beginning, and then there's a part 2 that basically says, but this right can be taken away based on various reasons, right? National security, health threats, and morals, which basically leaves it up for anybody could cancel anybody.
Like, this brings up another interesting one. Gun rights.
I was about to say about Joe Biden's, did you see his ATF candidate who basically said he wants to ban AR-15s? Sorry?
You mean the AFT?
Sorry, AFT. What did I say? ATF?
It's the ATF, but no, this is a joke about. So it's the ATF But Biden has multiple occasions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's forgotten all sorts of things.
Like like that tax institution called the ISR.
Right. But did you hear about this guy that was basically grilled by Ted Cruz and basically wants to ban all guns, like anything over a 20 millimeter, including the AR-15, which basically that's most handguns.
So I had a whole conversation about this, about like what is the exact like we are, of course, the people's right to bear arms. Sorry, to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the big thing. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, I have the right to bear arms. There was a whole conversation. We talked about like permits, taxes, sales of guns, stuff like that. Like you have every right to get a gun, but does that mean you're like the government has to guarantee accessibility to a gun?
Right.
So anyways, then it pretty much just came down to an understanding that, well, if you really want, depending on how you look at it, the government cannot ban guns, period.
Correct. So far.
But as long as the Second Amendment is in place, you cannot ban guns in general. If you tried putting limitations and stuff, there's arguments, not that I would necessarily agree, but there would be arguments you could make, but there cannot be sort of like a ban guns, period, legislation of any kind.
There are other ways to do it, though. But yes, I understand the point you're making. Like a gun tax, for instance, they technically could tax all guns. That goes up every year
because it doesn't change your right to bear arms.
Correct. That's what they do here. You're right. You have to get a license if you're a hunter.
Yeah.
And every year, it gets more expensive. So
right. Because I argued, I said, well, permits are then unconstitutional because why do I need permission for what I'm already granted?
Correct.
We're at like. Because then we talked about, well, people could just say, well, you need a permit for sale. Okay, so that's a business that wants that.
Mm-hmm.
But what if someone gives me a gun as a gift?
Yeah.
Should I just have the right to bear, to walk around with it? Which, interesting, that is what has happened in Texas.
And Kansas.
Constitutional carry.
Yeah, I think it's in 15 states now.
Yeah, it's funny how they call it constitutional carry because carry should be constitutional.
No. To be very fair, even Tim Pool did a segment on this because he's recently come out as very 2A, and there's him with some fucking huge guns going with his friends on the range and stuff. Yeah. Really fun stuff. But he talked about that. He talked about how right now in the U.S., in terms of gun rights, it is better than it's ever been in the history of the country. So back in the 80s and stuff like that, yes, you had a constitutional right, but they may grant it to you. So you had to apply and you had to give a reason in most states whether you'd get it or not.
Do you know when gun control first started?
No. When did it first start?
Reconstruction following the Civil War.
Oh, right. Okay. Slavery. Makes sense.
Yeah. Because it was initially put in place to control the
militias.
the idea was, crap, we've got all these freed slaves now. We got to make sure they don't get as many guns, even though they're all citizens now. Because the fear was there would be uprisings and all this stuff that would happen afterwards. Like the South would basically get ripped apart.
Okay, I didn't know that. I don't know.
Slaves.
Yeah, I don't know much about
that. Was the argument then. So, I mean, not to say it's necessarily now, but when you look at if people really want to get into racism and such, gun control.
Yeah, I agree. I know in the 60s and stuff like that, there was the famous Black Panthers showed up in California, the governor's house or the state house with guns, in protest of civil rights and stuff like that. And that is when I think Reagan might have been the governor at the time. That's when they started to implement it in that respect. But I don't know. I don't know more than that.
Historically, and just at its origins, gun control has been a racist thing. It's meant to sort of keep guns out of minorities' hands.
Yeah.
Because of from their stance, you can see why they did it, but it still doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
Because that right is guaranteed to all. So which is why there's even a new movement. You can't oppress a people that are armed.
That's right.
So if
I mean, it's
really,
the reason why China does not have a revolution. It's the reason that the Tibet, as much as everybody's, bigging up Taiwan, let's not forget Tibet that has basically been, absorbed into China. They couldn't fight them off. They had no guns. So that's a big part. And even at the Holocaust, there was a Jewish enclave in Germany where they were armed. Like the Jews had guns in that place. And they staved off the Nazis for I don't know how long. Eventually they fell, but that is the whole purpose of it. And every government knows it. The people have the power. And if they're armed, you will fear the people. So that's really, the crux of it.
Yeah. Red Crusader here saying, hey, they were commies, but I like their very American armed protest mindset. That's the thing, which is really interesting is...
the far left loves guns. Marx himself said, don't give up your guns.
This is the thing that's really tricky now. So the mainstream left is not the far left. Like,
correct.
And I hate saying true leftists should be
it's not true leftists because that's a spectrum, but the far left, like the actual communist,
the actual far left is as pro-gun as
the whole right,
as most of the right, I should say, because there are some in the right that will compromise on gun control. But it's interesting, and in some cases they might be more pro-gun than some on the right, like because far left. If you look on your political spectrum thing, most of them will typically kind of actually be on more on the libertarian side, which is where a lot of that Second Amendment kind of comes from. Like, and it was just part of that whole like workers of the world unite was basically we're the workers of empower the people, guns. Like it's just
whereas Marx himself said it. He said, do not relinquish your guns. The working class should not relinquish their guns. The one thing he got right.
And then on the right, when you have like your libertarians on the right, they believe in power to the people, but more in an individual sense. But that still opens it up to guns. Like,
you have the right to defend your house, your property, and your home. So, and your family.
And then the other side is you have the right to stand up to, the bourgeoisie with your guns.
I completely agree. I'll look into it, but it is exciting that Texas has gone constitutional carry, which basically means you can buy it, you could conceal it, you can basically walk around with it.
Now, obviously, businesses have a right to refuse service to those who carry. Because I know some businesses are just like, "Hey, you can't bring a gun in.
No guns in here." Yeah, I've seen that in Kansas.
I think that's just property rights. You have the right to sort of. Here we go. Good old Black Guns Matter. Those people are really cool. They're basically an offshoot of sort of the movement of Black Lives Matter, but they're pro-gun. So it's like,
So I mean, this is the hypocrisy of what we have as the left right now, is that they want to defund the police in places like Minneapolis and in Portland, and Portland is still burning to this fucking day. But then they're also anti-gun, which means, look, if you're not going to have the police there, you need at least the right to defend yourself. And these people have absolutely no concept of reality. They all fly out and go back to their suburbs anyway. And they leave these mostly minority neighborhoods to fend for themselves. Yeah. So I think one of the reports I saw recently in Minneapolis, pickpocketing and like small looting and all of these minority through the roof, man. Like it's just like off the scale, people getting mugged at daylight and all sorts of nonsense because you've demoralized the police and they've been told not to police like these small crimes. To flip that to be like a shop owner or somebody else who now has to defend himself, can't rely on the police, to say he can't have a gun to defend himself. No, you're burning the candle at both ends. That's never going to be a winning scenario.
Yeah. That was always a really interesting. I never saw it happen, but I think there were a couple times when our friend Spike Cohen was on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
So he would have a lot of these guys that were following that would do security for some of his events, and they were all open carrying.
Right.
And they all had, rifles and such, but he would always have pictures taken with him at different places he'd go to. So it would just be a picture of 20, 30 guys all with rifles and stuff, and they're just openly displaying them, and they'd take pictures, and we're in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yes.
And there were sometimes people would come up to us and be like, hey, people are a little bit worried, there's a bunch of guns here. We're like, oh no, we're fine, we're not doing anything. Whereas sometimes people would call the cops. The cops would show up, and then the cops would show up and be like, hey, we have every right to carry here. Okay, yeah, just don't cause a scene, basically.
Yeah. I've seen a video of some kid walking around one of these states with an AR-15 strapped to his back, just walking around, going into shops and stuff, in full view. And people, I think he was doing it as a kind of a stunt, like he said, it was a Second Amendment check or something like that. Yeah, of course people freaked out. White boy with an AR-15 walking through the roads, the stereotypes write themselves. So they're that, but as you're right, you have the right to do that. And ironically, Conk, you just mentioned it, that most of the mass shootings take place in gun-free zones.
Over 90% of all shootings take place in gun-free zones.
Correct. In fact, we've had recent incidents where mass shootings have been averted by people, good people with guns.
I think public areas, public buildings and such.
There's,
because I know
that's a policy debate.
Because I know federal buildings have gun-free areas, but I'm talking normal municipal, county level, state level buildings. It really depends. That opened up, there was that whole conversation where they were saying what if congressmen should be free to carry?
I think there is a congressperson that's carrying.
So with the the January 6th event and all this stuff, all the left kind of shit in their britches and such, freaking out about it. A lot of people on the right were like, all right, if you're so worried, let's just carry.
Yeah. There's some congresswoman or senator was elected, some chick, and she said she's going to carry her gun into Congress. She did a video about it and everything. Yeah, I can't remember.
And people in Congress were freaking out, you can't do that. And it's why? Granted, I don't know if the first Congress carried.
The first Congress, as in the very first Congress.
I wonder if
they
in
probably
the beginning
did.
of our,
they probably brought muskets into.
There's definitely talking there's definitely
was Virginia. When was your first capital? Was it in Virginia, or it wasn't just DC? It was somewhere else. It was, I can't remember. Maybe Philadelphia. I think it was. Was it Philadelphia?
It was Philadelphia.
I think it was Philadelphia.
Yeah. Before DC became the capital, but it's interesting. There's accounts of congressmen beating the shit out of each other in the chambers.
Oh, the good old days. Yeah. That shit still happens now in some parliament buildings around the world.
Oh yeah, dude. I remember watching a movie that made the joke about Taiwan Parliament.
Taiwan, yeah. I think you were showing me some videos from Taiwan.
Dude. I remember, dude, mainstream news, just watching it and people fucking beating each other up, old people with canes and shit, or sitting parliament members just beating the shit out of each other. It's
C-SPAN could only wish that they got that kind of action.
Oh my god, Taiwanese C-SPAN.
Yeah, it's like WWE. I love it.
Watch out. There's a crowd in the background.
Cheer.
Dude, I've seen some things. But yeah.
That's good. Yeah, Conk, on the January 6th thing, that whole shit show with Pelosi trying to do what is it? More hearings. I think that's really come back to bite them in the ass. So we'll see what comes of that.
Yeah. Well,
I think we're good.
You could say ending with a bang.
Boom, baby.
Well, I'm just thinking we're talking about guns.
Well, yeah, that too, and
so
politicians and guns. Yeah, I suppose.
Once again, I wanted to, of course, thank everyone for joining us. Now, if you do want to support the show in any way beyond just subscribing, of course, checking us out on all major podcasting platforms, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment, check out all our links below. But if you want to support the show, as always, let me just play this up again. As always. Oh no!
Oh no! You've lost.
Vaccine's not working.
Well, you've lost your magic powers.
Oh no! So, if you want to, of course, check out Tactical Soap to get 10% off. Use the coupon code 10K Rum, so you can be soap magnetic. That will support the show. Or check out subscribestar.com.
And it will attract the ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So check out subscribestar.com/shitload-preachers if you want to support the show in a more direct way on a monthly basis for as little as $1 a month. You can check that out as well. All the links in the Chiron below. And it's cheap.
Yeah.
That's like
gotta raise prices, man.
That's like 4 pennies a day.
Yeah. We're obviously too cheap, man. Cheap thing no good.
So good thing, no cheap. Anyways. We do appreciate everyone for joining us, of course, and of course everyone in the chat. Thank you for helping us out with giving us stuff to talk about, really. Anyways, we will of course see everyone next week.
Yes, thanks for watching, guys. Hit the like.